is you have to give 50 shekel. 50 shekel is the Arachin amount for a man between the ages of 20 and 60, independent of that individual's personal reality. We spoke about this again. This is a din of Arachin. Arachin is based on objective values. So it says that's bein l'kula, bein l'chumra. You could have someone who's worth much more than 50 shekel, but if he's a male between the ages of 20 and 60, Arachin value would be 50 shekel. You could have a man who's much worth quote unquote worth less than 50 shekel, and yet halacha l'maaseh, if he is a male between the ages of 50 and 60, of 20 and 60. He will be worth 50 shekel. Vim amar harei damav alai, no sineshaviav. But if conversely, if a person doesn't say I'm pledged the erech, but a person says I pledge the value. Remember we spoke about this in the chilik is erchin are objective values based on age and gender categories. Domim, right? The person pledges value. That's based on the value that a person would fetch on the open slave market. Gemara says the Gemara yesh be'erchin lahakir lahachmer kei zarechad sherich. And both now what the Mishnah Gemara picks up on is the Mishnah's example is Dafka one who pledges the value of a Jew. So what do you see from here? You see from here that it is only a Jew who is shaykh to Erchin and not an Akum. Leima Masis and Lo Rabbi Meir. Suppose I say that our Mishnah does not reflect the view of Rabbi Meir. Why? What does Rabbi Meir say? Disnan Ovid Kochavim, Rabbi Meir Omer Ne'erach Avalo Marich. When it comes to an Akum, Rabbi Meir holds that halacha l'maisa, an Akum can be the subject of an Erech vow, but cannot make an Erech vow. Our Mishnah seems to indicate that halacha l'maisa, an Akum is not even the subject of an Erech vow. So apparently the Mishnah does not reflect the view of Rabbi Meir. To which the Gemara says no. Afilu tim Rabbi Meiri. No, in truth, the Mishnah could even reflect the view of Rabbi Meir. Hu adin dafilu Ovid Kochavim nami. In reality, even Ovid Kochavim could be the subject of an Erech vow. Ella, top of Yudalid. Milsav agav orchei kamashron kid Rabbi Yehuda Amarav. Rabbi Yehuda Amarav. Asr la'adam shiomar kama noe knanizeh. Both said this is actually very interesting. That ultimately, again, the Mishnah reflects the view of Rabbi Yehuda, says the name of Rav, that halacha l'maisa, it is prohibited to go ahead and compliment an akum. A person is not permitted to say, what a handsome akum that is, right? What a handsome Gentile it is. So what does that have to do with the Mishnah? So remember again, the Mishnah was talking about that the chumrah and the kula of Erchin is that ultimately, again, even if you pledge the erech vow of the most handsome person or of the ugliest person, the Erchin value is the same. But because we don't want to use the example of quote unquote a handsome akum, therefore we go ahead and we definitely use Yisrael. Why don't you want to use the example of a handsome akum? Because this reflects the view of Rabbi Yehuda, says the name of Rav, that halacha l'maisa, one should not extol the virtues of an akum, right? One should not compliment an akum. What is that based on? Take a look at Rashi. So Rashi says over Milsav Agav Orchei Kamash Malon, Delo Tana Esanasha Beknanim, the Mishnah did not want to state the most handsome amongst the Knanim, Lefisha Asr Lahaskir Shem Noi Ala Knani. Because ultimately, again, one should not pay homage or compliment to a Knani. Anakum Kid Rabbi Yehuda Dechsiv, where does that come from? Lo Sechanim. This is actually quite interesting. The pasuk says Lo Sechanim. So Rashi HaKadosh quotes two interpretations of that pasuk. Either Lo Titein Lahem Chein, which is what Rashi is quoting over here. In other words, I will say this is actually very important. This is not just about an akum, but this is even about things associated with an akum. For example, if one passes by a church, one is not supposed to compliment the architecture of a Beis Avodah Zarah, right? One is not supposed to go out of their way to extol the virtues or to compliment an akum. What's the point of this? The point of this is it creates barriers, right? It creates a barrier, it creates a wall between Jew and Gentile, which is something ultimately, again, that we try to do in order to create distances between us and the nations of the world. The other interpretation of Rashi of Lo Sichanim is Lo Sitein Lahem Chaniya Bekarka, which is actually the prohibition to sell non-Jews land in Eretz Yisrael. That one is not permitted to sell Jewish real estate in Eretz Yisrael to non-Jews. Okay, therefore, again, I will say, in order to go ahead and avoid this issue, the Mishnah phrases it as Arachin only dealing with Jews, but halacha l'maaseh could also reflect the view of Rabbi Meir, who holds that an akum could be the subject of an Arachin vow as well. The listni es hana shebi Yisrael v'esakir shebi Kananim. So then, why not go ahead and set up the Mishnah and let the Mishnah read whether a person vowed, right, the Arachin value of the most handsome Jew or the most ugly of the Canaanim, to which the Gemara says, Bechaduma Kamairi, because the Mishnah wants to keep it easy, dealing with one nationality, Klal Yisrael. Is that true? Vahat Katani Rabose, and in a later Mishnah, when we speak about the issue of ones, of a man violating a woman, so we will see the Mishnah will says Hagidolo Shebekuna Vesakitana Shebi Yisrael. The Mishnah is going to speak about again that the penalty for a man violating a woman is independent of the woman's respective identity. Whether a man violated a woman of a very high social order, like she's the daughter of the Kohen Gadol, or of a lower social order, halacha l'maaseh, the penalty is the same. To which the Gemara says, Hasam Chad Umahu. There, even though we're referring to Kohanim Yisraelim, it's one nation. Elamakdishu the Kadishi Kahanitfei. It just happens that Kohanim are more Kaddish than the rest of us. But at the end of the day, it's the same nation of Klal Yisrael. The possibility is, I did the Kabbalah Misnei Seifa Steachuza to be Yisrael who mishkachas la, kam lo mishkachas la, to la bnei achuzan inu mishum hachi katani la be Yisrael. But the other possibility is, since the end of the Mishnah speaks about Steachuza, or the latter part of the Mishnah speaks about Steachuza, an ancestral field, which only applies to Jews, does not apply to non-Jews. Therefore, the beginning of the Mishnah, which speaks about Arachin, also limits its discussion to Jews only. So Rabbi say, so bottom line is, the Mishnah does not, don't read this Mishnah as impacting the previous discussion as to whether or not an akum can participate in an Arachin vow. It's possible that even though our Mishnah over here, when speaking about the fact that Arachin, the same Arachin applies to the handsome of Jews or to the ugliest of Jews, does not in any way mean to comment on the ability of an akum to be the subject of an Arachin vow. The Mishnah just wanted to keep the subject on Jews for a variety of different reasons, either because of lo sechanim, or maybe to make it symmetrical, ultimately to steachuza. But you can't necessarily infer from this what the halacha would be vis-a-vis an akum regarding Arachin. Beautiful. Next Mishnah. But when it comes to steachuza, there is a kula and a chumra. How so? Echad hamakdish b'cholas hamachuz. We'll say whether you are makdish a field. Cholas hamachuz literally means on the outskirts of the city. Now, in general, again, fields on the outskirts of the city were considered to be less valuable. Rashi says why is that? If you look at the first Rashi in the Mishnah there, Echad hamakdish snei b'cholas hamachuz svivo sa'ir. You are makdish a city on the outskirts. Makdish a field on the outskirts of the city. Shene chashuva kol kach. Medras Haragalim. So we'll say this is actually very, or Haraglaim, I should say, because we'll say fields that were on the outskirts of the city were often used as shortcuts for pedestrian traffic. So because whenever your field is used as a shortcut, you're going to trample some crops in the process, and therefore the field is worth less money. So whether you're makdish a field, and we'll say, so again remember, steachuza means ancestral land. Which means this is a field that your family received as part of the initial chalukah of Eretz Yisrael under Yoshua bin Nun. What's the halacha of such a field like this? It returns back ultimately again to its original owner, come the Yovel year. If you are makdish this field, if you go ahead and you consecrate this field, whether you consecrated the field on the outskirts of the city, makdish bepardesos sabasti, or I will say, or whether you went ahead and you were makdish, right, sabasti or sabasti pardesos, right, sabasti, which apparently were the best fields. No sein zera chomer sorim bechamishim shekel kasef. I will say, when you are makdish a steachuz, there is a very specific formula for redemption. The specific formula is as follows: you pay 50 shekel per area of field, per area that is able to produce a Chomer is an amount of barley. So just for our purposes, essentially, it's a base core, right? A base core of earth, a field, is able to produce chomer of seorim. So essentially, the value of redemption for a stei achuzah is 50 silver shekel per base core. And the Mishnah is saying over here, the novelty of that is, that's bein l'chumra, bein l'kula. You might have a field that's worth a lot more, you might have a field that's worth a lot less. Doesn't matter. At the end of the day, if you are makdish, a stei achuzah, that is the formula for redemption. 50 silver shekel per base core of land. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, echad stei mikna, skip line. Ubistei mikna, no stei eshavya. But I will say this formula is dafka for stei achuzah, not for stei mikna. Stei mikna is other real estate holdings you may have, right? Other real estate holdings, ultimately, again, halacha l'maisa, you go ahead and you purchase a field. So if you purchase a field, halacha l'maisa, if you, and you're makdish it, you redeem it from the Beis HaMikdash at its value. Rabbi Eliezer Omer echad stei mikna ve'echad stei achuzah. Rabbi Eliezer says both stei mikna and stei achuzah are both redeemed with this same formula, namely 50 silver shekel per base core of land. If that's the case, ma bein stei achuz l'stei mikna, then wherein lies the distinction between a stei achuzah ancestral land and purchased property? Shebestei achuzah hu nosein chomesh, hu bestei mikna in a nosein chomesh. Excuse me. I will say, what's the distinction? The distinction is that ultimately, again, in the stei achuzah, when you redeem it, you pay an extra fifth, and with the stei mikna, you don't pay an extra fifth. Good. So we'll say, leaving out Rabbi Eliezer's shita right now, we learn a very important halacha. When it comes to stei achuzah, ancestral land, if you are makdish it, and then you want to redeem it from the Beis HaMikdash, very specific formula. 50 silver shekel per base core of land. Why base core? Base core is the amount of area necessary to produce a chomer of seorim. That's bein l'kula, bein l'chumra. Whether you have Shalom Aleichem, right? Whether you go ahead and you have land that is worth much more, whether you have land that is worth much less, halacha l'mais, again, that is the amount for redemption. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Huna, Hikdish Sadam Alei Ilanos. Rav Huna says, if you're makdish a field that is filled with trees, Kishu Podin Poda Ilanos b'Shavyan, v'Chozer uPoda Kar. Or b'chamishim shekel kesef. We'll say this is actually very interesting. Rav Huna says as follows: Halacha l'maisa, if you're makdish a field that is filled with trees, so Rav Huna says if you want to redeem that field, you essentially redeem the trees separately, and then you redeem the karka. You redeem the trees for their value, and then you ultimately again redeem the karka using the formula we saw in the Mishnah, namely 50 silver shekel per base core of land. Alma kasar Rav Huna. Therefore, Rav Huna says, what Rav Huna's shita is, Adam makdish ba'ayin yafa makdish, that when a person is makdish something, Rabbosai, he is makdish ultimately what we call ayin yafa. We're going to see this discussion over here, that when a person is makdish something to the Beis HaMikdash, how are they makdish it? Are they makdish it ba'ayin yafa or ba'ayin ra? Essentially, are you makdish it in a way that is beneficial to the Beis HaMikdash? You want to be as generous to the Beis HaMikdash as possible? Or ayin ra, you're makdish it, but you're makdish it in a more, I don't want to use the word stingy, because the truth is you're being makdish something, but in a way that's not as generous. Not as generous. So Rav Huna clearly says that halacha l'maisa, when you're makdish ba'ayin yafa. Why? Because think about this. I'm being makdish a field that is filled with trees. Rav Huna says, therefore, when I'm podeh it, I'm redeem it in two stages. I redeem the trees, and then I redeem the land, which means that the Beis HaMikdash is getting what? Double money, right? It's going to get redemption money for the trees and redemption money for the earth, for the land. Eisvei Rav Nachman Rav Huna. So Rav Nachman raised the kasha to Rav Huna. Echra makdish b'chol ha'samachuz ve'echra makdish bepardeiso sabasti. No sin base chomer zeres sorim b'chamishim shekel kesef. And I was remembering, what did the Mishnah say? Whether you're makdish a stei achuzah and the field is on the outskirts of the city, or you're makdish ultimately again the pardesos, right? The orchards of Sabasti, right? You go ahead and you pay the same formula, 50 silver shekel per base core of land. Now I was saying, now interestingly enough, in the case of Pardesos and Sabasti, those are orchards. If they're orchards, then what? Then they have trees. And yet here the Mishnah says that what? How are you redeeming this field? By just you're redeeming the land. When you redeem the land, the trees are redeemed with it. This seems to contradict Rav Huna, to which the Gemara says, Amarle ru'uya lepardesos kamina. I mean that it's a field that is fit for orchards, but there are not actual pardesim planted on it. Because they're not actual pardesim, in other words, it's a field that's fit for a pardes, but it's an actual pardes. That's why you're just redeeming the land at the valuation of 50 silver shekel per base car. Esve, base zera, eli ela base zera. I only know that you redeem the field. Stay gifanim, ustay kanim, ustay elonos minayin. How do I know that these halachos of redemption apply even to a vineyard? Stay kanim, stay elonos. Talmud lomar soda mikol makom. Therefore, I will say the pasuk says soda, and soda comes to include all types of fields. But I will say, but again, what do you see from here? It sounds like that halacha lamaisa. When you redeem the field, all you need to do is what? Redeem the karka. And when you redeem the karka, everything that sits on the karka is redeemed along with it. Contradiction to Rav Huna. Amarle hachanami poda v'chozeru poda. Rav Huna would say, no. What's the case? In these cases, I will say, where there are trees on the field, what would you do? Or for that matter, vineyards on the field, you would redeem the karka, and then you would redeem whatever else is attached to the karka. Eisvei hikdish shloshi lanos mimata asar lebeis sa'a. Let's say if you were makdish 3 trees, but those 3 trees were planted in an area that technically could sustain up to 10 trees in one base sa'a. Harizeh hikdish es hakarka ve'es ha'ilanos shebinehem. Ultimately, again, you are, let's say first wide line, you are makdish the karka and all of the trees between them, and therefore kishu poda base zera chomer sorim b'chamishim shekel kasef. And therefore, when you redeem it, when you redeem the field, you redeem the field again, Abba, using the valuation that we saw before by Esteachus, and namely 50 silver shekel per base car of land. Pachus mikan, less than this, o yes sirakin, or more than this, o shekdishan b'ze'achazeh, or if you redeem, or if you were makdish 1 tree after the next, hareza lo hikdish lo es hakarka v'lo es ha'ilono shebineh. We'll say in that case, you have not been makdish the karka, nor have you been makdish the trees in between them. V'lo, not only that, ela afilu hikdish ilonosav. If you are makdish the trees, hikdish karka, and only afterwards you makdish the land. Kishu poda, when you redeem it, poda sailonos b'shabiehen, you redeem the trees for their value. V'chozer upoda karka base zera chomer sorim b'chamishim shekel kasef. And then afterwards you redeem the field, ultimately again 50 silver shekel per base core of land. So this seems to indicate that halacha lamaisa, you don't redeem the trees separately than the karka. Maybe you'll say, no, here Rav Huna will once again also interpret it as you redeem the karka by itself and the trees by themselves. Since the end of the brayso is talking, we've already set it up as a case of redeeming and going back and redeeming. Lo. Ella Hamani, whose opinion is this reflected? We'll say Rabbi Shimon he. The Amar Makdish Ba'ayin Ra Makdish. We'll say it's Rabbi Shimon. And Rabbi Shimon is of the opinion that what? That halacha l'maisa, when a person is Makdish something, they're Makdish it Ba'ayin Ra. So we'll say now we see a fundamental machlokes Rabbi Shimon and Rav Huna about how Hekdish works. When a person is makdish something, is he makdish it ba'ayin yofeh, like Rav Huna, or ba'ayin ra'ah, like Rabbi Shimon? This sanya, hamakdish es hasodeh, hikdish es kula. If you're makdish the field, the brayso says, you're makdish the field and everything in it. Rabbi Shimon says, no, lo hikdish ela charav hamurkav, ustan hashikma. Rabbi Shimon says that you only are makdish. Charuf hamorka means the grafted carob tree, the charuf, ustana shikma, and ultimately again, Stana Shikma. Another, these are both considered to be more mature trees that do not necessarily need the ground to sustain them. Rabbi Shimon, Amos Seifa V'lo Ela Filu Hekdish Ilonosov, V'achar Kach Hekdish Karka. Yerbo say, if that's the case, look at the Seifa. What does the Seifa say? If you are Makdish the Ilonos, and afterwards you are Makdish the Karka, Kishu Poda, when you redeem it, Poda Sailanos B'Shavyehen, you redeem the trees for their value. V'chozer upoda base zera chomer so'orim b'chamishim shekel kasef. You subsequently redeem the land for 50 silver shekel per base car. Rabbi Shimon, if it's Rabbi Shimon, lezel basar pidyon. If it's Rabbi Shimon, ultimately again, I will say, let's judge, let's determine how you redeem it by what the status of the land is at the time of the pidyon. The lifriku agav araihu, and therefore redeem the trees based on the land. Not based on the land is wrong, but redeem the trees ultimately again together with the land. After all, Rabbi Shimon holds, this is actually a very interesting discussion now. Rabbi Shimon holds that when redeeming land, we look at the relationship of the land to that which is growing on the land based at the time of the pidyon. What does that mean? The sanya. Both listen to this case. It's an interesting case. If I purchase, right, let's say Ruvain purchases land from his father Yaakov. Now I will say, just to understand what's happening over here. Yaakov has land which is his ancestral land, right? It's Yaakov's Steachuza. Ruvain the son purchases this land from his father while his father is still alive. Vikdisha. And ultimately again that Reuven is makdishit. The achar kach meis aviv. Now what happens afterwards? So after Reuven was, so again to be clear, Reuven purchased land from Yaakov. Yaakov sold Reuven his steachuzah, his ancestral land. But for Yaakov, right? For Reuven, is it steachuzah? No. Because it's his father's land. It's not his right now. He purchased it from his father. After he purchases it from his father, he's makdish it. He gives it to the Beis HaMikdash. Then what happens? V'achar kach meis aviv. Then what happens? Yaakov dies. So I'll say, so now what happens? Reuven wants to redeem the land from the Beis HaMikdash. But I'll say, what's the shaila? So we'll say, remember again, when Reuven comes to redeem this land from the Beis HaMikdash, is he redeeming what we call stei mecher, purchased land, or is he redeeming stei achuza, ancestral? What's the nafkamina, Rabbi say? We saw in the Mishnah, nafkamina is, if you're redeeming stei mecher, right, sold land, how do you redeem sold land? Value. If you're redeeming stei achuza, what's the valuation? 50 silver shekel per base car land. Rabbi say, see the interesting shot in this case? When Reuven was makdishit, it was stei mecher. Now when he's coming to redeem it, it's effectively stei achuza because his father died and he inherited this property. So as I say, now watch this. If Reuven purchased property from his father and he was makdishit, v'achar kach meis aviv, and while the land is in the possession of the Beis HaMikdash, Yaakov the father dies. Minayin shetehei lefanav kistei achuza. How do I know that when Reuven redeems this land from the Beis HaMikdash, he doesn't redeem it as stei mecher? Instead, he redeems it ultimately again as stei achuza. Talmud lomar im es stei miknaso asher lo mistei achuzaso. Well, it says, listen to this. The pasuk says, and if he will be makdish a stei mikneh that is not of his stei achuza, sada she'ina ru'uya lios stei achuzaso. When is something called stei mikneh? Only when it is not capable of becoming stei achuza. Yatsa sazu she'ru'uya lios stei achuza div Rabbi Yehuda. This comes to exclude this case over here, where the field that Reuven bought, even though when he bought it, it was stei mikneh, but ultimately again it was capable of becoming a stei achuza. Therefore, when he redeems it as a stei achuza. Rabbi Shimon, so did Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Meir says, "Minayin lokeach sadeh me'avah." So we'll say. So just I want to point out over here, this issue that's Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon holds that when it comes to redeeming a field, we don't look at the status of the field at the time that you are makdish it, but rather we look at the status of the field when? at the time when you're redeeming it. This is very important, why I will say, because like this exact case, where you could have a field that had one status at the time it was consecrated, but then that status fundamentally changed at the time of the pidyon. Rabbi Shimon says, we look at the status of the field when you come to redeem that field. Rabbi Meir says, Rabbi Meir Omer, Minayin l'lokeach sada me'aviv. How do I know that if, again, Reuven purchases a field from his father Yaakov, umeis aviv, and the father died, va'achar kach hikdisha, and then only afterwards Reuven was makdish the field, minayin shetehei lefanav kistei achuza. How do I know that that field is treated like a stei achuza? They will say, now again, remember this case is a little bit different. What's happening in this case over here? In this case, right, Reuven purchased the field from his father, then his father died, and then Reuven was makdish the field. So this case is a little bit easier, right, because the hekdish didn't take place until after the father died. But nevertheless, remember again, Reuven's first relationship with this field was not as a stei achuza. Reuven's first relationship with this field was how? As a stei mecher. He was purchasing it. But how do I know that ultimately, again, when Reuven subsequently is makdish the field, that is treated like a stei achuza? Talmud Lomar, Amud Beis, Talmud Lomar, im es stei mikna, so asher lo mistei achuza, so sada she'ena stei achuza. Yatzasazu she stei achuza. So I'll say ultimately again, fine, it comes to stei achuza. So we'll say, so two different cases over here. In case number one, Reuven is purchasing a field from his father Yaakov, and then what? Then Reuven is makdish it. After he purchases it, he's makdish it. Then Yaakov dies. But remember again, when Yaakov dies, where is the field? It's in the possession of the Beis HaMikdash. Now, Reuven the son wants to redeem the field from the Beis HaMikdash. So what does Rabbi Shimon teach us? When he redeems the field, how does he redeem it? He redeems it as a stei achuza. Because ultimately, Rabbi Shimon is of the opinion that when you come to be podeh a field, we look at the status of the field at the time of the pidyon. When Reuven comes to be podeh the field, Yaakov has already died. Reuven has effectively inherited the field, and therefore he redeems the field as a stei achuza. Ultimately, again, Rabbi Meir comes to teach us different halacha, that what? That if Reuven purchases the field from his father then dies, Reuven is then makdish it, even though Reuven's first relationship with this field was as a stei mikneh. When he is makdish it, ultimately he's makdish it as a stei achuza. Good. To which the Gemara says, Ilul Rabbi Huda Rabbi Shimon afilu ikdisha achakach meis. Right? V'achar meis av. So we'll say ultimately again, according to Rabbi Huda Rabbi Shimon, even if he was makdish it and only afterwards the father died, stei achuza havya. My time. What's the reason? Imishum kra. If you want to say it's because of the pasuk. Kra lichid Rabbi Meir hu da'asa. The pasuk comes to back up Rabbi Meir's assertion. Elad mishum da'azal basar pidyon. Rather, Masira will say because when we go ahead and we establish the identity of the field, we look at the identity at the time of the pidyon. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon, Kra Ashkechu v'Darash. Rabbi Shimon found the pasuk in the Arachin that Im Kein Lichtov Rachmana Im Es Stei Miknaso Asher Lo Achuza. So, if that's the case, the pasuk could have just said, if you have a Stei Mikna that is not a Stei Achuza, my mistake. What does it mean mistake? Sada Shein Ruya Leo Stei Achuza. We'll say ultimately again, the din of Stei Mikna only applies to what? To a field that is not capable of becoming a stei achuza, but a field that is capable of becoming a stei achuza, ultimately again it's true like a stei achuza. We'll say, and this is indeed how the Rambam paskins that halacha l'maisa, when it comes to redeeming a field, we look at the status of the field at the time of the pidyon, and this is very important because we'll say, I would have thought without this schema, I would have thought that the pidyon are determined. Makdish it, which makes sense, right? The identity of the field should be locked in at the time that you consecrate it. So therefore, technically speaking, if you consecrate a field and it is a stei mecher, then you should redeem it as a stei mecher. Kamash Mala, no. We look at the status of the field for redemption purposes at the time of redemption, at the time of the pidyon. L'may nafkamina, for exactly this kind of case, where you have Reuven, who purchased the field from his father Yaakov. at the time that, and then Reuven is makdish the field. At the time that Reuven was makdish the field, the status of the field was what? Was a stay mecher. How do you redeem a stay mecher? Right, by the value. But yet, again, subsequently, Yaakov dies, Reuven effectively inherits the field, and when Reuven comes to redeem the field, essentially that field is now what? A stei achuza. So therefore, again, the Gemara teaches, Rabbi Shimon teaches, and he said the Rambam Paskins, that halacha l'maisa, when you come to redeem a field, we look at the relationship you have to the field now, not the relationship you had to the field at the time of consecration. A very important halacha. Amar Papa. That's another interesting halacha. Amar Papa. Hikdish trashin pode b'shavyan. We'll say if you are makdish clods of earth. Trashin means literally again clods of earth. We'll say now what's the chap over here? That this is unfertile or infertile? Infertile, right? Infertile soil, right? Meaning it's not going to produce anything. So trashin is just clouds of earth that are not going to produce anything. So what's the halacha? Pode b'shavyan. We'll say ultimately again you are opposed to them in accordance with their value. My taima. What's the reason for this? Base zera amarachmana v'hani la b'nei zrina. Because we'll remember again, when it comes to stei achuza, although we have an objective valuation of 50 silver shekel per base core, that valuation comes from what? Is based on the amount of crop that a base core would produce. If you have soil, if you have land that is not producing anything, so the valuation does not apply, and you simply redeem it for its value. Lo galan, we'll say if you are makdish these trashin and you did not redeem them, right? Then comes Yovel, Yotzin beYovel. Ultimately, again, they come back to the owner at Yovel. My timer, what's the reason? Sadam Rachmana Kolduhu. Because when it comes to redemption of Yovel, so the pasuk says Vayoha Sada Betseiso by Yovel. Ultimately, again, I'll say when it comes to Yovel, Shalach Lamaisa, the din of Yovel applies to anything that's called the Sada. And these clumps of earth, as much as they're infertile soil, they're still called the Sada, and therefore they go back to the owner at Yovel. So the Gemara says, Machar Trashin, right? Ultimately, again, if you sold clods of earth, Nigalin Pachos Mishteshon, or both say, now the halacha normally is as follows. Generally, when you sell karka, when you sell a field, right? You stamp sell a field, the halacha is we generally say that the owner cannot, the seller, I should say, cannot redeem his field. Let's say I sell of my stei achuza. I sell to Reuven a field of my stei achuza. The halacha is I can't redeem that field for the first 2 years after the purchase. In other words, we have to protect the real estate market in some way. So therefore, again, even though I know when I buy stei achuza, right? Remember again, in general, the Jewish real estate market is an interesting one because what happens with all real estate transactions? Yovel, right? So we'll say, by the way, I just want to say something very interesting. It works with a lot of real estate, even presently in Eretz Yisrael today, right? That a lot of real estate purchases in Eretz Yisrael are long-term leases, right? But ultimately, again, but are not actual sales. In biblical, right? Or I should say not in biblical. When Yovel applies, it's even a bit more complicated because the real estate market, essentially, when you purchase land from someone, assuming that we're dealing with stei achuza, you're really just purchasing land for 70 years, right? Because Yovel, again, all ancestral lands go back to their original owners. So I'll say, so now watch this. So, 50 years, the 50th year, I'm sorry. 50th year, thank you. After 7 Shemitah cycles, right, you have the year 49, which is a Shemitah year 50, which is a Yovel year, thank you. And then the real estate table is reset, so to speak. Ancestral lands go back to its original owners. So the Gemara says over here, so therefore there was a very important halacha, which was if you sold stei achuza, you couldn't redeem it for 2 years after the sale. This way the person who sold it, will get some ROI, some return on investment when you're purchasing land. So I'll say, now watch this. Trashin, if you sold clods of earth, or as infertile soil, nigalan pachos mishtei shanim. Ultimately, again, you could redeem that even less than 2 years. My time, what's the reason for that? First while then, say down with days, mispar shnei tivos amarachmana. Because I will say again, the Torah, when speaking about the fact that you can't redeem property for 2 years after the sale says what? So that the purchaser should be able to get mispar shtei tevuos, should be able to get 2 crop cycles from it. So vahani lav b'nei tevuoninu. But ultimately, again, these clouds of earth, so we'll say the whole idea of not being able to redeem your ancestral land for 2 years after the sale is so that what? The purchaser could get some return on investment by at least getting 2 crop cycles from it. But if you're selling infertile soil, so ultimately, again, that window does not apply. Lo galan, if you did not redeem them, you did not redeem these clouds of earth, choseres labaylim biyovel. Ultimately, again, the land goes back at Yovel. My time, what's the reason? Because ultimately the pasuk says that any achuzah, ancestral holding, goes back at Yovel, and even though again this field is infertile, it's still called an ancestral holding. Hikdish ilanos, if you are makdish trees, pod b'shavyan. Ultimately, as well as if I makdish trees, not the field, but I makdish my trees to the Beis HaMikdash, and I want to redeem them from the Beis HaMikdash, I could redeem them at their value. My time, what's the reason? Beis zera amrachman avalo ilanos. Because we both say the halacha is that the specific formulation or the specific valuation for redemption of steachuza of 50 silver shekel per base core of land only applies to what? To real estate, to actual karka, and not to trees. If you're makdish trees and you want to redeem them, you simply redeem them for their value. Lo goalan, if you did not redeem the trees, ein yotzin lekohanim beyovel. Then ultimately, we'll say they do not become the property of the kohanim at Yovel. Why? V'hayo asodeh. We'll say the halacha is it is only a field that you are makdish, that you do not redeem, which becomes the property of the kohanim at Yovel, not trees. Not trees. V'hayo asodeh amrachmana v'lo ilanos. Machar ilanos, if you sold trees, ein nigalan pachos mishtei shanim. Both say the same halacha applies, namely, you are not permitted to redeem them for the first 2 years after the sale. My time, what's the reason for that? Shnei tevuos amrachmana v'hani b'nei tevuos ninu. Because both say the pasuk says that when you sell land, you have to give someone 2 crop cycles, and these trees also have crop cycles. Because of that, you can't redeem the trees less than 2 years, within 2 years after the sale. Lo goalan, if you did not redeem the trees, ein chosros lebaylim biyovel. But see, interestingly enough, if you don't redeem the trees within the first 2 years, the halacha is those trees do not revert back to their owners at the time of Yovel. Why not? My taima, v'shavla achuza so. Because the pasuk says the achuza, right? Literally, again, the ancestral holding will return. Amrachmana v'lo ilanos. That refers to karka and not land. We'll say an interesting halacha. So land goes back to the owners at the Yovel year. Trees do not. Amar Mar. So I'll say. So by the way, we I just want to point out we saw this distinction. You'll say to yourself, okay, but trees need karka. So I'll say, remember again, we already saw back in our Baba Metzia days the ability to make a division between trees and the rest of the karka. While it is true that when you go ahead and you get, when you purchase a tree, you get the karka perhaps directly underneath the tree, but that doesn't entitle you to karka around the rest of the tree. Also remember in our Baba Metzia days, we even discussed an interesting halacha, which is, let's say I purchase trees in the middle of your field. Does that automatically entitle me to what? To a pathway to the trees, or do I have to purchase the pathway separately? So you can have this concept ultimately again of buying trees, but without a karka entitlement. So you go ahead and you sell trees. Those trees do not come back to you at the time of Yovel. Amar Mar, hekdish ilanos, if you are makdish trees, paude b'shavyan. Ultimately, again, I will say, so again, this is if I makdish trees, so I can redeem them from the Beis HaMikdash at their value. So remember again, very important distinction. If you're makdish land, steachuza, so remember again, there's a specific form, there's a specific valuation. If you're makdish steachuza land, 50 silver shekel per base core of land. Your makdish trees are essentially treated like stea mecher, right? Regular purchase land. Therefore, they are redeemed for their value. But 1 second. Belikdishu agav arayhu, velifrakua agav arayhu. But why wouldn't trees? Why wouldn't they become hekdesh by dint of the land, and ultimately again be redeemed through the land? Right? The Gemara says, look at Rashi, "V'lifriku agav arayu, makom moshav ha'ilan ulahadru lebailim agav arayu, im machern v'gia yovel, v'may amar machar ilana selo galam in chozin lebailim yovel." To which the Gemara says, why are you looking at the trees independent of the land? Why aren't the trees looked at as a part of the karka? V'chitema ilanos akdish aralo akdish. Maybe you'll say, because when you're makdish ilanos, you're only the ilanos and not the karka. But yet in Ardoim said, man de mizbon dikla lechavrei kani le mishipule v'atoma. Then Ardoim said that when you sell a palm tree to your friend, we'll say you sell them not only the tree but what? The land, mishipula. Rashi says, "Makom moshav ilam atomo." We'll say when you sell a tree, one thing is clear, which is what is included with that tree. Then Ardoim said, the area upon which the ilan sits ad litahom. We'll say all the way down. This is actually incredible idea, which is the halacha lamaisa. When the Ardoim said, when you purchase a tree, you get ultimately again the area of the karka which the tree sits, and all the way down. It's like, why is that important? Like drilling rights, right? So we'll say ultimately again, if there were to be something found buried underneath that tree all the way down, the owner of the tree will be entitled to it. Lav mi'itmar Allah beba machmas taina. Ultimately, we'll say, but yet we said, what was that referring to? Rashi says, machmas taina shetono sheskelo shen karka. So we'll say ultimately again, the Nardam said, when was that true? That's only true if karka is explicitly mentioned. If a person says, I'm selling you, ultimately again, the tree together with the karka, that's when the purchaser of the tree gets the karka. But if there's no mention made of karka with the sale of the tree, then we assume the sale of the tree only includes what? Only includes the tree itself, includes no karka. That's why halacha l'maisa, if you are just makdish the tree to the Beis Hamikdash, I will say, so that is not treated like steachuza. Therefore, if you want to redeem it, the novelty over here is, even if you have trees that are sitting on a steachuza, and you are makdish those trees, halacha l'maisa, now you want to redeem those trees. How do you redeem those trees? At their value. Damav, and not like the rest of the steachuza. Good, says the Gemara. Stay mikna, no stay in shavyav. So let's remember again. Next part of the Mishnah was halacha l'maisa. If your makdish is stay mikna, you redeem it for its value. Tanrabanon b'michsas. The pasuk says b'michsas. The pasuk goes v'chishav lo hakoin es michsas ha'erkecha ad shnas hayovel v'nasan as ha'erkecha bayom ha'kodesh l'Hashem. So we'll say. So remember again, if you makdish something to the Beis Hamikdash, a regular field, not a steachuza, a regular field, and you want to go ahead and you want to redeem it. So what do? We figure out the value of the field. How would you figure out the value of the field? The number of crop cycles that the field could produce ultimately until the Yovel year. Ma balil mod lefi shenemar zerach omer sorim bechamishim shekel kesef. Because we'll say, since by steachuza, there's a very specific valuation. We go ahead and we write the valuation, or the redemption valuation for us steachuza is what? 50 silver shekel per base core of land. Yachalaf stemik nekain. I might have thought that also a stemikna purchase field should have the same valuation. Talmud lomar michsas. There, I will say the pasuk says michsas. I will say michsas means valuation. Rabbi Eliezer Omer ne'emar kan v'chishav v'ne'emar la'alon v'chishav ma la'alon davar katzuv afkan davar katzuv. Pasuk Rabbi Eliezer says over here v'chishav, and it says by stay mikna chishav as well. Just like over there, it's a defined amount. So to over here, it's a defined amount. We'll say, remember again, this is Rabbi Eliezer in the Mishnah. Rabbi Eliezer's Mishnah says that a stay mikna is redeemed the same way that a steachuza is. That just like a steachuza ultimately again is 50 silver shekel per base core of land, a stay mikna is 50 silver shekel per base core of land. According to Rabbi Eliezer, the only chilik is that a steachuza you add on an additional chomesh, and a stay mikna you do not. Ibaylahu, Nabanan isluk zer shava umafkin le chomesh. Odema less lahu gzer shava The last lechomesh. So do the Rabbanon ultimately hold to this Gzer Shava, and therefore ultimately again agree that there will be a Chomesh, or not? To which the Gemara says, Amarava Mistabra, last Gzer Shava. It would appear that the Rabbanon do not hold to this Gzer Shava. How so? Medigali Rachmana, Chomesh Gabi Steachuza, the Gabi Makdish Beso. Since the Torah speaks about the Chomesh by a Steachuza and by one who is Makdish his home, Haviluhu Shnei Ksuvin Abayin Kechan. But remember again, therefore you see the Torah states Chomesh in two different situations. Whenever the remember we saw this concept many times. When the Torah states a concept once, stating it once can make it what? A principle that applies in all cases. Once you state it twice, it means it only applies in those two defined areas and in no more cases. According to Mandar, who says that you can go and learn it out. Since Torah mentions Chomesh in a variety of situations, Torah speaks out Chomesh, the additional fifth, by Meiser Behema Torah, or Behema Tamea, Havile Tuva. There are many instances where Torah mentions Chomesh, and therefore what? Ve'in Malamdin. The Rabbi says the Torah mentions it many times, ultimately, again, even they will agree in Malamdin. Tanya Kavase de Rav Volomi Tameh. But say there is a brisa like Rava, but not according to his reasoning. So what's the brisa? B'michsa se'erkecha hekishu akasov le'erchin. But say ultimately again, the Torah equates this case to erchin. Ma erchin. This is the case of stay mikna. Ma erchin ein mosif chomesh. Just like by erchin Rabbosai there is no additional fifth, so to af stay mikna ein mosif chomesh. So to by stay mikna, when you redeem it, there is no additional fifth. In other words, Rabbosai, even according to Rabbi Eliezer, who holds that the valuation for redeeming a stay mikna is the same thing as a stay achuza, he will agree that whereas by a stay achuza there is an additional fifth that is tacked onto the redemption amount, that fifth does not apply to a stay mikna. But I will say ultimately, again, for our purposes, halacha l'maisa, we don't pass like Rabbi Eliezer, we pass like the Tanakama, namely, that when it comes to redeeming a stei achuzah, we use the biblical valuation. That's the explicit pasuk in the Torah. You valuate a stei mikna, ultimately a stei achuzah, as 50 silver shekel per base core of land. When it comes to redeeming ultimately a stay mikna, which is just purchased property, I will say, how do you evaluate it? Dame, value. That's how we pass. That's what Rambam paskins halacha l'maisa. Good. Says the Mishnah. We'll say next case. B'shara muad shehemis es ha'eved lahaku lahachmir. Remember again, we said about say shara muad. It means a shore that an ox that has gored 3 times. It is now a muad. If that shore kills an eved. Right, this is an Eved Kinani. So the Torah says that halacha l'maisa, right, that shore, the owner of that shore pays 30 silver shekel to the owner of the Eved. So it says the Mishnah, this represents both a kula and a chumra. How so, Ketzad? Echad shehemes es hanoah shebe'avadim v'esakir shebe'avadim. Whether your shore killed a beautiful, a very handsome Eved, or a very ugly Eved, no saying shloshim sela. You pay the same amount. Rabbi saying, the truth is, just to reframe that a little bit, matter handsome or ugly, but what matters a lot more is what Rabbi say. Whether the shar went ahead and killed a very valuable Eved or a relatively invaluable Eved. Halacha l'maisa, ultimately the payment is the same. You pay, so Rabbi say this represents a kula and the chumrah. So if your shar happened to kill an Eved who happened to be of one of the world's finest diamond cutters, so therefore again, his value was off the charts, you're still going to pay 30 silver shekel. Masha'in Kain, if your shor happened to kill, a 95-year-old Eved Kanani who was walking with his walker with the tennis balls on it, right? So halacha l'maisa, you're still going to go ahead and only pay 30 silver shekels. So we'll say halacha l'maisa again, whatever, right? Whatever the value is, right? Independent of the value of the Eved, you pay 30 silver shekel. So the Gemara says as follows: Hemis ben Chorin, no saint Shavyav. It will say if your Eved went ahead and killed a free man, right, a non-Eved, then what? You pay the value of the individual. Chaval bazeh ubazeh, no saint nezek shalim. I'm sorry, I missed Hemes ben Chorin. I'm sorry. If the shar killed the ben Chorin, sahalocha l'maisa, again, no sin shavyov. You paid the value of the person who was killed. Chava bazeh ubazeh, no sin nezek shalim. Rashi says chava bazeh ubazeh, bein be'eved bein ben Chorin v'lo hemisu mishalim nezek shalim. If ultimately again if shar gored someone but didn't kill them, so ultimately again the owner pays nezek shalim. Fine, says the Gemara. B'muad in betam lo. Now remember, what the Mishnah is focusing on, the Gemara is focusing on over here, is the last case. Right? Right? The last case of the Mishnah was chaval bazeh o bazeh. So remember again, the Mishnah opened up by talking about dafka shar hamuad. Now we're assuming therefore that the last case of the Mishnah is also talking about a shar hamuad. And Chorin, what's the halacha? You pay nezek shalim. Now what that sounds like is, only if it is a shor muad do you pay nezek shalim. If it was a tam, you would not pay nezek shalim. B'muad in betam lo. Only a muad pays nezek shalim and not a tam. Leima masisin lo Rabbi Akiva. Our Mishnah clearly does not reflect the view of Rabbi Akiva. Why? Disnan Rabbi Akiva Omer aftam shechava ba'adam mishalim b'mosar nezek shalim. Rabbi Akiva is of the opinion that halacha l'maisa, even a tam who injures someone pays nezek shalim. Now, the truth is, the case over is a bit more complicated. Mosar nezek shalim has to do with the situation where the person injures the ox and the ox injures the person. But leaving that aside, because it's not really material for our purposes right now, Rabbi Akiva is of the opinion that even a tam ox who gores a person pays nezek shalim. The Gemara is just pointing out our Mishnah seems not to reflect the view of Rabbi Akiva, because our Mishnah indicates that it's only a muad ox who gores who pays nezek shalim. To which the Gemara says no. Afilu tim Rabbi Akiva. In reality, our Mishnah could reflect even the view of Rabbi Akiva. Hu adin da afilu tam nami. The truth is, it's true. Even a tam shor who gores someone will pay nezek shalim. But one second, then why does the Mishnah only frame it as a muad? Va'aidi de kaboy lemisna seifa hemis eved hemis ben chorin de bemuatu de mishkachas la betamlo mishkachas la mishum hachi katani muad. Rabbi says, since ultimately again the case of where a shor goes ahead and kills someone. Right, kills someone. By an eved he has to pay 30 shekel, and by a person he has to pay shavyav, the value of the individual. Since that halacha only applies to a muad and not a tam, therefore, just for Mishnaic symmetry, we made the last part of the Mishnah that deals with damages deal with a tam as well. But that inachinami, the Gemara says, we actually adopt. Excuse me, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Since the case of where if a shor kills an eved Kanani, he will pay 30 silver shekel. Or where a shor injures someone, he will pay or kills someone, he will pay the value. That only applies to a muad. So for Mishnaic symmetry, we phrased the last case of damages also by a muad. But in fact, halacha l'maisa, we paskin like Rabbi Akiva, namely what? That even a shor tam who goes ahead and injures someone will have to pay nezek shalim. So we'll say that indeed is how we paskin, that even a shor tam who injures someone will pay nezek shalim, and it's only out mishnaic symmetry that we phrase the entire thing as dealing with a muad. We will stop over here. We will pick up in Mishnah with the rest tomorrow. By the way, we have some beautiful, beautiful agarata in the daf. Beautiful agarata, Mirat Hashem.